All right, strap yourselves in, because today we're diving deep into some seriously apocalyptic stuff.
Oh, this is going to be good.
We got a ton of requests from you guys to cover Abaddon.
Yeah, it seems everyone's fascinated with the angel of the abyss.
And rightfully so.
Right.
This dude is the ultimate personification of destruction.
Exactly.
So we're taking a deep dive into this YouTube video. Él es destructor, el ángel destructor que desatará el juicio final, Abaddon.
Catchy title?
Right. It's from the channel Misterios Divinos. Now, we're not here to preach or anything.
No fire and brimstone today.
We're just going to unpack what this video tells us about Abaddon, why he's so captivating.
Yeah, why this figure still has such a hold on us centuries later.
Exactly. So right off the bat, this video doesn't hold back on the imagery.
Oh no, it's full-on apocalyptic horror.
And a destroyer, angel of the abyss? I mean, come on.
Yeah, they're really laying it on thick.
And then there's the whole locust army thing.
Oh man, those locusts. They're like something out of a nightmare. Faces like men, teeth like lions, scorpion tails.
Talk about
terrifying.
Right. It's not just like your typical locust plague destroying crops.
Oh, no, this is personal.
This is straight up torment. The video emphasizes the agony they inflict, making people actually wish for death.
It's pretty intense stuff.
And that's where things get a bit tricky, theologically speaking. I mean, wouldn't a God who uses such horrific torment kind of contradict the whole loving and merciful thing?
Well, the video tries to reconcile that by framing it as this, like, final reckoning.
Okay, so like a last chance to repent before the ultimate judgment.
Exactly. The suffering, as horrific as it is meant to purify humanity.
So it was like a cosmic reset button, wiping the slate clean.
Yeah, like starting over from scratch. And this idea of destruction as a precursor to renewal, it's not just an Abrahamic thing. Think about the phoenix rising from the ashes, or the cyclical nature of life and death in Eastern philosophies.
I see what you mean. But is that really the whole story here? Because some scholars argue that Abaddon isn't just an instrument of God, but like a representation of inherent chaos in the universe. How does that fit into this whole divine punishment thing?
That's a good point. And it brings up some pretty big questions about free will versus predestination.
Right. Like, if Abaddon is this embodiment of primal chaos, does that mean even God's will is subject to forces beyond his control?
Or is Abaddon's chaotic nature actually a tool, strategically wielded by God to achieve some specific outcome?
Yeah, the video doesn't really delve into those nuances. It kind of glosses over that.
Yeah, it's more focused on the fear factor.
Which, fair enough, it's a video about the angel of the abyss.
Right.
But it also doesn't touch on the potential for Abaddon to act independently, which I find super interesting.
Oh, like going rogue.
Yeah, could he, even for a moment, defy God's will?
And unleash chaos on a scale we can't even fathom.
Exactly. I mean, think about Lucifer, right? Another angel who supposedly rebelled. Is there a chance Abaddon's just biding his time? Waiting for the right moment to break free?
Now, that's a scary thought. I mean, it really taps into our anxieties about forces beyond our control.
Right. Like, what if even divine agents can turn against their intended purpose? This video definitely hints at that possibility, which makes the whole agent of God thing even more complicated.
It does, doesn't it?
If Abaddon, enjoys inflicting pain, is he truly carrying out God's will? Or is he just fulfilling his own dark desires?
Good question.
Does obedience even matter if the motive is corrupted?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
And the video just, sidesteps that whole issue.
It's like they want to keep things on a surface level, focusing on the fear without getting into the moral and theological complexities.
Right. And I think that's where our deep dive can really add some value. Let's go beyond the Abaddon is scary thing and unpack some of these more challenging questions.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's dig into some historical and literary parallels.
See how other cultures have grappled with divine justice, especially when it involves such extreme measures.
And then we got to circle back to that whole free will versus predestination thing. I have a feeling this is about to get intense.
Oh, yeah. Buckle up. So we were talking about historical and literary parallels to Abaddon. When we look beyond the Bible, we actually find a bunch of similar figures of divine punishment across different cultures.
Oh, that's interesting. Like who? Give me some examples.
Well, in ancient Greek mythology, you have the Erinyes, you might know them as the Furies. They were these terrifying female deities who personified vengeance.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of them. Weren't they, super intense?
Yeah, they were pretty hardcore.
Yeah.
They would pursue anyone who committed crimes against their blood relatives.
So, kind of like cosmic bounty hunters, except instead of bringing criminals to justice, they bring the justice itself.
Exactly. They were driven by this relentless thirst for justice, even if it meant inflicting unimaginable suffering. And get this, the Greeks believed that even the gods couldn't escape the series' wrath if they messed up bad enough.
Wow, not even the gods. That's wild. It makes you wonder about the whole concept of divine punishment, right? Is it always linked to suffering? Like, can there be no justice without pain?
That's a great question, and it's one that's been debated for centuries. Some people believe that suffering is a necessary part of atonement, that it helps you understand the weight of your actions and ultimately leads to spiritual growth. Others say a truly merciful God wouldn't need to resort to such brutal measures.
It's a tough one for sure. You know, when I was reading about Abaddon, I kept thinking about Shiva, the Hindu deity. He's often depicted as a destroyer, but he's also associated with creation and renewal.
That's a really interesting connection.
It's like he embodies both sides of the coin, destruction and creation.
Exactly. It brings us back to that whole duality we talked about earlier, that idea of destruction as a necessary step towards creation. Shiva's dance of destruction is seen as this cosmic act of cleansing, making way for a new cycle of existence.
So, do you think it's possible to view Abaddon in a similar way? Not just as a punisher, but as a force of cosmic renewal?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially when we consider the whole apocalyptic context.
Yeah.
The book of Revelation, where Abaddon is mentioned, is all about endings and beginnings. The destruction of the old world and the creation of a new heaven and a new earth.
Right, right. So in that sense, Abaddon's role could be seen as clearing the way for a fresh start, a return to purity.
Exactly. Like hitting the reset button on humanity.
Still seems pretty harsh, though, having to go through all that torment just to get to the renewal part. Couldn't there be a gentler way?
Well, I guess it depends on how you look at it. Some might argue that the severity of the punishment is meant to drive home the seriousness of sin and the importance of righteousness.
Okay, but hold on. We keep talking about this righteousness thing. Who gets to decide what that even means?
Right.
Is it about strictly following religious rules, or is there some wiggle room for individual interpretation and moral autonomy?
That's a huge question, and it's at the heart of a lot of theological debates. Is righteousness something imposed from above? A set of rules we have to follow blindly? Or is it something we discover and develop ourselves, our own personal code of ethics? Unfortunately, this video doesn't really offer much insight into that.
Which is a shame, because that's where things get really interesting. If Abaddon is supposed to be this agent of divine justice, shouldn't we be asking what that justice even looks like? Who gets to decide who's worthy of salvation and who deserves to be punished?
You're absolutely right, and it's a super relevant question in today's world, where we're constantly dealing with issues of morality, ethics, and social justice. This idea of a single all-powerful being deciding who's good and bad seems a bit oversimplified, don't you think?
Totally. It kind of ignores the whole free will versus predestination thing we talked about before. If God already knows who's going to be saved and who's doomed, what's the point of even trying to be righteous? Are we all just puppets in some divine play?
Those are some seriously deep philosophical questions, and I don't think there are any easy answers. But I think it's important to remember that the whole idea of Abaddon, like any religious or mythological figure, is open to interpretation. It reflects our fears and anxieties, but also our hopes and dreams.
So maybe instead of getting bogged down in this one video's interpretation, we should be looking at Abaddon as a symbol, a representation of these bigger questions about justice, morality, and existence itself.
Exactly. And I think that's a much more interesting and engaging way to approach this deep dive.
I agree. So moving on from the specific imagery and interpretations, let's explore some alternative viewpoints. Some scholars say that Abaddon isn't a literal being, but a metaphor for the destructive forces within ourselves. What do you think about that?
That idea of Abaddon being like this internal force is kind of mind-blowing when you think about it.
It really is.
It's like instead of some external punisher, the abyss is actually inside us all along.
Yeah, like the potential for destruction is part of human nature.
Our anger, greed, all the not so pretty stuff. Exactly. Those impulses, the ones we try to suppress, they become our personal locusts, tormenting us from within.
Man, that's heavy. It makes you think about the choices we make every day.
Right. Are we feeding those inner demons, or are we trying to find some peace?
Are we cultivating goodness, or are we letting those locusts run wild?
And that actually connects to some really interesting psychological interpretations of these apocalyptic figures. Some therapists see them as like symbolic representations of our shadow selves.
Oh, I've heard of that. It's those aspects of our personalities we try to hide or deny, right? The stuff we don't want to admit is there.
Exactly. The stuff we try to bury deep down.
So confronting Abaddon in that sense could be like confronting our own dark side.
Yeah, facing those inner demons head on. It's not about some external judgment day. It's about self-awareness and personal growth.
It's like taking responsibility for our own spiritual well-being.
Exactly. We're not just waiting around for some divine intervention.
We're actively working towards becoming better versions of ourselves.
And it takes away that fear factor that's often associated with figures like Abaddon. Instead of being scared, we can focus on understanding and transforming those darker impulses.
So maybe the real deep dive here isn't just about Abaddon.
It's about understanding ourselves.
Our capacity for both darkness and light. Wow, this has been quite a journey.
It really has. We've gone from the abyss to our inner selves.
From cosmic horror to personal transformation.
And that's the beauty of these deep dives, right?
They always lead to unexpected places. So, as we wrap up, we gotta ask, what resonated with you the most?
What image or interpretation stuck with you?
Is Abaddon this terrifying force of destruction, a divine punisher, a symbol of renewal, or a reflection of our own internal struggles? We've given you a lot to chew on today. Now it's your turn to go deeper, explore your own understanding of this enigmatic figure.
And who knows, maybe you'll discover something new about yourself along the way.
Until next time, keep exploring those deep, dark corners of the universe, both within and without.